A brief disclaimer before I begin this part. Now, as most of you probably already know, I was forced to initially remove Part 3 of this retrospective because of copyright reasons on the trailer of the new Tomb Raider reboot. Now, originally what I planned on doing is going back and retooling that part, so it just didn't have the trailer, and just had images to avoid copyright issues, but the more I think about it, the more I just don't want to go back and do that, and in the end, I've opted to just remove that part entirely. Why? Well, simply put, the game's coming out in, like, what, a week? Maybe a little more than that? It's coming out very, very, very soon. And at this point, you guys know I friggin' love Tomb Raider, and I'm totally gonna get that fucking game. So, I'm probably just gonna end up live streaming that game, my first time playing through it, or just outright reviewing it. In fact, it'll probably end up being both, knowing me. So, I don't feel a need to go into detail about the game again, and I don't feel a need to retool that part, and it's just a lot easier for me just to remove it. So, I'm sorry if you guys will miss that part, but it wasn't really that interesting. It was mostly me being very skeptical about the game, and, just wait until the game comes out, because I can almost guarantee I'll have something ready for you guys then. So, enjoy the rest of the review. I hope you guys like this retrospective, and, yeah. So, after the fallout of the Angel of Darkness, it's actually really surprising that there is even another Tomb Raider game to talk about. And keep in mind, it wasn't just that IDOS had less faith in the series now, it was also the fan base. You need to realize that Tomb Raider fans aren't like Sonic fans, in that they'll keep coming back for more and more even after several games of nothing but crap. Tomb Raider fans don't really take any shit, and Angel of Darkness left such a sour taste in people's mouths that everyone was pretty much sick of Tomb Raider. What didn't help was that Core Design had successfully not evolved the series for 5 straight friggin' games, and seeing their one attempt at trying to put the series into the next generation fail miserably was enough to put most people off. Fortunately for everyone who wanted to see a good Tomb Raider game again, Crystal Dynamics was there to deliver. And let me tell you, what they did with the series was unexpected and fantastic at the same time. They took Lara in a whole new direction, basically reinventing her entire character, and updating the gameplay to allow for a more fast-paced style of platformer. Gone were the days of the tank-like controls, and gone were the days of painstakingly lining up jumps. This time Lara would be able to move around quickly and efficiently. It's an appropriate step. Like I said, the controls for the old games worked while they were still, in date. After a while, you just get sick and tired of the clunky style, and you wish they'd try something different. Crystal Dynamics aimed to do that, and boy, sure as hell did they succeed. Tomb Raider Legend was the follow-up to Angel of Darkness, starting a new storyline, and basically pretending like the previous games didn't exist. Now, Crystal Dynamics has basically said that this series of the games that they made really isn't a reboot necessarily, but everything is so different now that that's really what it is. No more dark, brooding storylines, no more bitchy as hell Lara Croft. This time Lara is a positive character, and a much more, shall we say, upbeat story. I think one of the best parts about Tomb Raider Legend, though, is the way they throw everything at you. It's sort of like a James Bond movie in a way, once again placing Lara Croft front and center, showing off what she can do, and it works really well. It's highly appropriate for the character, and honestly, it's a much-needed boost for a series that was going in the dark and brooding direction. My name may be Darkness the Curse, but that doesn't mean I don't appreciate a more upbeat style of exposition, and I definitely appreciate it here. Lara's grand entrance on top of it definitely added to the whole gameplay experience, and the actual game was highly impressive. Remember how I said the whole thing was fast-paced now? Well, no exaggeration. There's no action button now. Instead, jump is X, and Lara will automatically grab ledges as she pleases. Now, this is something I explained would cause problems, but the way Crystal Dynamics handled it doesn't really rob control away from the player. It's streamlined, yes, and you don't have control over when she grabs stuff. I think what makes up for the lack of action button is the fact that you feel like you can do basically anything. There's no real restrictions here. She has a grappling hook now, which is a very nice addition, and really, anything that's climbable, she can climb on, no problem. And just the freedom of motion you have is pretty nice. Like I said, it's just less clunky. It feels like you're able to do anything, and that's something I think Tomb Raider really needed by this time. In addition, the combat has been completely overhauled from the previous games. Now it's much more streamlined, and now it's way less clunky. Instead of just standing there waiting for enemies to die like in the old games, now you can jump around, jump off enemies' heads, and perform stunts that allow you to do more damage. The game encourages you to use Lara's acrobatics to avoid shots, and overall it's a satisfying way to do it, and again, appropriate to her character. In addition, the mixed up environments and the different gameplay styles are a plus. There's parts where you can control a motorbike, which is fantastically done. And really, it's hard to complain about this entire game. It's such an amazing breath of fresh air to be had after Angel of Darkness, and really any Tomb Raider fan would be selling themselves short to not at least give it a try. The storyline is also fan-frickin-tastic, no joke. This is one of the most well-written plots in any Tomb Raider game, and it branches out to set up sequels. But what I really like the most about it is the way they portrayed Lara. Instead of being cold-hearted as before, and instead of being overly tough to try to make up for the fact that she's, a girl, she acts more like a real woman. Independent, headstrong, intelligent, beautiful, but still a real woman. I can actually see her character and see her actually existing. She's not perfect, she has her flaws, yet she's still respectable, athletic, and definitely a much-needed update to the way she behaves as a person. The acting here is great too, especially in terms of voiceovers. Just the emotion you feel from these performances, and the way it displays Lara's character, is just great. Remember how I said she's flawed? Well, she has a bit of a temper, and Jesus Christ.
She went where I was supposed to go, where you could have gone!
Makes sense right this second, or I swear I'll execute you where you stand!
I told you to pull out the sword, I told you!
Where is my mother?
Avalon! It's not a myth, don't you get it? You'll never understand. I'm wasting my breath.
From this moment, your every breath is a gift from me.
Holy shit! I think my favorite part was actually the part where you go into the old King Arthur tourist attraction. I don't know why I liked that level. It was just really interesting and different, and it was one of my favorite parts of the whole game. But really, after Angel of Darkness, it's so nice to see an actually good Tomb Raider game. One that takes the series in a new direction, yet it's a good new direction. But I won't sit here and say the game is perfect. Like I always say, no game is perfect and the game has its flaws. Two main flaws in particular that bother me. One, the game is short, and considering that some of the previous Tomb Raider games, particularly 3 and Last Revelation, were really long, this game is honestly kind of lacking in terms of length. I mean, it's not too short, but it's not nearly as long as one would expect. Which is unfortunate, because it's one of those games where you don't really want the experience to come to an end, and it will probably come to an end much quicker than you would like. Another problem is that the game is very linear. Yes, there are a lot of great puzzles to solve, and the level design is really good, except that there's no real exploration here. Everything is on the same path. There's no real way to get lost, and if you do, I have no idea what the hell you did. It's all a single straight line, which is in stark contrast to the previous Tomb Raider games, which allowed for more open-world exploration appearance. Yeah, you had to stay in the bounds of the level, but you had to get up and look around a lot, and oftentimes you find yourself getting lost, particularly, again, in games like Tomb Raider 3 and The Last Revelation. Here, though, it's just not possible to get confused. You know, you might get stuck on a puzzle, sure, that's great, the puzzles are really good in this game, but that's about it. Once you figure it out, it's just one straight shot. You never need to figure out where you're going or what you're doing. And in fairness, if you like that sort of thing, that is great. Fan-frickin-tastic. But for those of you who prefer a more open-world experience, this is not gonna do it for you. You know what I really like about this game, though? The witty banter over the frickin' radio. Lara has two supporting characters named Zip and Alistair, who talk to her over the radio, give her advice about things, and help her research stuff. Let me tell you, hearing these guys talk is some of the most entertaining shit in this whole game. Like, the core game would be great on its own, but just that I have these guys along for the ride makes the whole thing so much better. It may interest you to know that Tomb Raider Legend turned out to be the most critically acclaimed Tomb Raider game since Tomb Raider 2. Considering Tomb Raider 2 is considered to be the best Tomb Raider game in the entire series, and the fact that it's one of the best-selling games ever, that's saying a lot. So of course they would make a follow-up, but it's not a sequel. It's a prequel! Tomb Raider Anniversary is the remake of the original Tomb Raider game. Yes, I said that. A remake of the original Tomb Raider game. The one that looks like this. Oh yeah, that's awesome! That's a great idea! I love that! I would love to be able to play the original Tomb Raider game in HD. Make it a lot more fun, update some of the levels. There's a lot to like about that thought. But before I even get into it, I just want to point something out. Tomb Raider Anniversary is the worst-selling Tomb Raider game of all time. It sold worse than Angel of Darkness. It sold worse than Chronicles. It sold worse than any other game in the series.
What? That's ridiculous! Why?
You know, I actually still don't know why. I have yet to figure that out. Maybe people were put off by the fact it's a remake? I don't know, but if you honestly were put off by that and didn't want to play Anniversary, you are missing a lot, because this is one of the best damn frickin' remakes I've ever played in my life. Not only is it very loyal to the source material, but it remolds her character into a more appropriate one for the current storyline. This game basically wants to tie in with Legend in terms of how Lara's character acts. It's also supposed to be one of her first adventures, and she's actually 19 in terms of the confines of this game.
The very idea that such a well-done homage to the original series didn't sell well is damn near insulting, quite frankly. And unfortunate, because a lot of work went into this game.
The game, well, first of all, looks frickin' great. Seriously, graphical work, fantastic here. Musical score is appropriate and sounds really good. Lara's character is portrayed appropriately. She's portrayed as a younger girl and acting sort of like that, but that's fine. I don't mind that. Level design is also really good. It remains fairly loyal to the original game, with some slight changes, mostly to take into account Lara's new freedom of motion thing, where she can do a bunch of different moves that she simply couldn't do in the original game. You can see areas that look very, very similar to the first game, and you can see that they were probably basically looking at the first game when they designed these levels, in order to take into account what the original game looked like, so it makes for an appropriate experience. The game is basically doing its own thing, and still being loyal to the source material at the same time, and that's the best way you could possibly do a remake, in my opinion. The storyline is slightly altered, not drastically so, but it's a little bit different, mainly because it has to set up Underworld, which the game does tie into just a little bit. The entire point of remaking the whole game was so it tied into the current storyline set up in Tomb Raider Legend and in Tomb Raider Underworld, the follow-up to this game. Overall, though, the gameplay is pretty nice. Now, the combat is very similar to Legends, but instead it relies on you dodging and doing pinpoint shots, which is a little bit different than Legend, but still very similar and satisfying as hell. Definitely a stark contrast to the original game's combat, which, well, like I said, has aged horrendously. I think a lot of old school fans would get a lot of fun out of this game. It's so well done, and it's such a good jumping on point even if you're not a fan. Honestly, if you're looking to get into the Tomb Raider series, I'd say start with Anniversary. It's a nice mix-up of what the new games are like, yet very loyal to the old ones. I say that mainly in terms of the puzzles in this game. The old games had a very different kind of puzzle system, where it was more about looking around the environment and doing things all over the place, whereas in Legend, the puzzles are very isolated in their own rooms, so there's no real backtracking or anything. But in Anniversary, the puzzles are very, very similar to the first games, so you get that backtracking experience, which results in a nice blend of old and new. So if you really want to get into Tomb Raider, I'd say this is the place to start. And no, I'm not recommending it just to make the game's sales look better. It's already too late for that. Sad face. Why you no buy game? Alright? Why you no buy game? Just saying. Tomb Raider Underworld would follow up Tomb Raider Anniversary, and would put the cap on this trilogy, completing the entire storyline that's been set up thus far.
Now, I'm going to be upfront with you all, right now, for those of you who don't know, because I have talked about it before. Tomb Raider Underworld is probably not just my favorite Tomb Raider game ever, but one of my favorite games of all time. And don't get me wrong, I love The Last Revelation. It's my favorite of the original series, but Underworld blows everything that came before it completely out of the water.
And that's no exaggeration. I freaking love the shit out of Tomb Raider Underworld. And you know, I really don't know why. There are a lot of reasons I could give, but I don't think I could ever elaborate enough, or ramble in this case, to explain why I love Tomb Raider Underworld so much. Especially considering I've had a lot of people come up to me and be like, you know, I didn't like Underworld. I liked Uncharted 2 better. You know what? I need to get this out of the way now because it's going to set up something I'm going to talk about later. I hate it when people compare Tomb Raider and Uncharted. Because, to me, they're very different games, and let me tell you why. It's not just a matter of me being loyal to Tomb Raider and hating Uncharted for ripping it off or whatever, because Uncharted didn't rip Tomb Raider off. It's not even the same kind of game. I mean, it is, but it's not... Let me explain. Okay, Tomb Raider, all the games, and I don't care which one you're playing, is very, very focused on platforming. That's basically all you do. Some games had more combat than others, but at its core, Tomb Raider has always been a pure and simple platformer, which is always what the games were focusing on. Uncharted, all the games, is mostly cover-based shooting. Like, honestly, that's really all you're doing. Yeah, there's platforming segments in the games, but considering how often you do cover-based shooting in those games, the platforming sort of takes second stage compared to that. Which is one of the reasons why I'm not particularly wild about the Uncharted games. There's just too much combat. I'm not a fan of that much cover-based shooting. You know, if I wanted to play Gears of War, I'd go play Gears of War, alright? Right? I thought everyone kept telling me how it's an awesome platformer. That's not really what it is. Uncharted is a cover-based combat game with some loose platforming and puzzling aspects, whereas Tomb Raider always focused on the platforming and the puzzling, and saved the combat for little microbursts. Never too much at the same time. You get what I'm trying to say? And I'm not trying to say that Uncharted sucks compared to Tomb Raider. And while I only like one Uncharted game out of all of them, which is 2, I still understand that people enjoy those games. What I'm trying to say is that to me, there's a very stark contrast between Tomb Raider and Uncharted, and comparing the two games really isn't fair to either of them. And a lot of people like to tell me that Underworld is worse than Uncharted, and Uncharted 2 just impressed them more. Well, look, if you wanted to watch a movie, that's great, but that's not what Tomb Raider Underworld's about. It's about the platforming, which, I'm sorry, I liked Uncharted 2, but Tomb Raider Underworld did platforming so much better. The amount of freedom of motion in Tomb Raider Underworld is frickin' phenomenal, and I think that's one of the big things I love about it. Just the simple fact that you can basically do anything you want. And I know I said Legend gave you the freedom of motion thing, but Underworld does that times 10. No joke, the amount of moves and animations that Lara has is phenomenal for an open world platformer like this. And yes, I said that, open world. It's not really open world, I guess. You still have isolated levels, but unlike Legend, the levels are way more expansive. And yeah, there's backtracking, much like the old games. So basically they answered the main complaint of Legend, which was that it was too linear. Underworld is not linear hardly at all, which is great. It allows for more looking around, trying to figure out what to do. You know, kind of like, I don't know, the Tomb Raider games. See what I'm trying to say? In addition, combat is more down to earth. Gone are basically all those cool special moves you had in the previous games. And in its place is the ability to melee and just shoot. It's really basic, yes, but it works. And honestly, I will take the ability to melee my opponents over the cool Matrix special moves any day, because it just feels more real. It feels more like I'm actually in a combat situation, I guess. In addition, I know what you're gonna say, graphics don't make a game, but I'm sorry, this game is freaking gorgeous. And seriously, to this day, it's one of the best looking games I've ever played in my frickin' life. Are you watching this in 1080p? You fucking better be, because you have no idea how frickin' long it took me to render that shit. I did this for you, because if you're not watching this game in full HD, you are doing yourself a disservice, because this is by far one of the most beautiful games out there to this day. Why? Well, they just did a lot of work with the graphics. Remember how I said in my Vector Man review that Vector Man was one of the few games I'd say you should play for the visuals? Well, this is another one of those. Even if you're not a fan of Tomb Raider, just seeing the graphical presentation here is a joy to the eyes. The game just looks fantastic. Some games have been described as photorealistic. This is one of them. And this time is not a lie. The game looks real. That is an achievement in itself. The musical score is also top-notch. The previous games had that too, but this time, I don't know, I just liked it a lot better. Maybe it's just me, but yeah, it's probably just me. I also like all the different environments in this game. Once again, you're going to different locations around the globe, and it has a nice variety, and I can appreciate that about any game. The storyline is great. It's a lot darker than the previous titles were, sort of like that, but not bad, I guess is the best way I could put it. Your main enemy in the game is Natla, who was the enemy from the very first Tomb Raider game. Just the fact that I'm squaring off with her again made me love this plotline. In addition, this is one of the few plot lines where the evil twin plot doesn't feel cliche and stupid. I really like the Lara's doppelganger thing. I just think the character was portrayed really well, and a lot of thought went into the conception of it. There are bike segments, once again, but they're not isolated from the rest of the game. Instead, you get to use the motorbike freely in the middle of gameplay. That's also really good in itself. I could ramble on about this game for hours, and you wouldn't really understand what I'm talking about. I only brought up Uncharted before because it's often compared to Uncharted, and like I said, I don't think that's fair to either game. They're completely different, and it really depends on what you're looking for. And I won't say Underworld's the perfect game either. It's got a few problems. For one, I'm confused. Like, this has come up a lot in Tomb Raider. How Lara deals with being cold. For one, in the first game, the very first game, she wears short shorts on a mountain. Even in the remake she does that. I'm not even sure how you could do that. Problem two, this game has you going under a sheet of ice, wearing an outfit that I'm fairly certain does not keep you protected from cold. Especially water. That's as cold as that water should be. You see where I'm going with this? I mean, I know it's a video game, but I'm just not sure this is physically possible. I mean, the level looks nice and it's really cool, but how is she able to do that? Is just what I want to know. So all I'm asking. Another problem that the game has is the DLC. Now, I love the DLC. No joke. Especially Lara's Shadow. It's freaking awesome. Problem. You can only get the DLC on the 360 version, which fucking sucks. Like, honestly. It's so unfortunate, especially since I want to recommend you get the game on Steam or something because it's so good, but you won't be able to get the DLC. And the DLC is so fucking worth just getting it on the 360, like you don't understand. Oh, that sucks. But other than that, what else can I complain about? I'm really trying to come up with reasons to complain about the game, because I know I basically told you that's freaking awesome and you should play it right now this whole time. Okay, it's a little buggy sometimes, occasionally. Her animations will get weird. It's easily fixable. It doesn't really break the game at all. And it's just a really good game, and you should really give it a try if you haven't. And if you don't like it, that's fine. Hell, if you don't like any of the Tomb Raider series, which some of you have pointed out, that's great. You know what? I'm glad you're still watching this. You want to know why? Because I appreciate people willing to expand their horizons. Even if this retrospective hasn't made you want to expand your horizons or play the games, hell, you watched it. You tried. I can appreciate that. Good for you.
I just want to thank you guys for being here to take a little trip down memory lane with me. As I said in the beginning of this series, Tomb Raider is one of my favorite video game series of all time, and doing a little tribute to it really meant a lot, and just the fact that I got such a positive reaction means the world to me. So, thank you guys for watching. This is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.